It doesn't matter who we are. What matters is our plan. No one cared who I was till I put on the mask.
If I pull that off, will you die?
It would be extremely painful.
You're a big guy.
For you.
So let's get right into it. Rose, I know you have a lot to say about this one. So why don't you start us off by talking about your history with The Dark Knight Rises and maybe tell us how your feelings on it have evolved over time.
Yeah, The Dark Knight Rises, I won't say it's not a good movie. And I don't enjoy watching it very much. But I've thought about it more than almost any other film. The extra textual elements, I think, are maybe even more fascinating than the film itself. So with The Dark Knight, it was a total surprise to me. Like, I don't think I'd seen Batman Begins at that time, or I'd seen it like on TV or something. I wasn't super familiar with those movies. So it was a shock. But Dark Knight Rises, I was really fucking hyped for. Really, really hyped for. And they showed the opening scene in IMAX previews, which unfortunately I did not get to see. But the audio leaked onto the internet. And the audio for the opening scene leaked onto the internet.
I remember this.
And I remember listening to it and just being so floored by what I was hearing. I was like so fucking excited for this movie. And little did I know that dialogue would completely transform its meaning for me over the subsequent years. Over the next fucking decade. Like, I think this is probably, like 2010 or something? Or when did this come out?
2012.
Yeah, so the audio would have been like probably 2011 or something. And around this time, I started getting into problematic. I was very on 4chan a lot on the TV board. And this opening scene slowly, over the course of years, became what I think is like maybe the greatest meme.
It's very good.
Next to Pepe, probably, because Pepe actually became a political symbol, so Pepe probably wins out there. But Baneposting is a years-long 4chan project. A meme that has spanned mediums, and I think, and we'll get into this more later in the second part of this episode when we talk about the franchise as a whole. I think by looking at Baneposting, just like looking at the Nolan Batman films in general, you can get an insight into where the culture was heading. Because Baneposting, of course, it started out like as a joke. The dialogue, I mean, I have to bring it up here. The legendary scene of course, there's so many weird pieces of dialogue in this, from you're not allowed to bring friends, all the way to lot of loyalty for a hired gun. He didn't fly so good. Who's next? All very weird pieces of dialogue. But the legendary one, of course, is
so bizarre.
The legendary one, which still befuddles me to this day, is I'll just read straight off. CIA agent. If I pull that off, will you die? Bane. It would be extremely painful. CIA agent. You're a big guy. Bane. For you.
Yeah, that's, if I could just interject for a second, that is such a classic example of the Nolan brothers idea of like how to inject a little bit of like levity into the script. Like they're like very serious minded kind of people in their writing, but they want to have these little bits that are like funny. But it just feels so strange and alien because it's like, it doesn't seem like being funny or putting little bits of humor into the writing is natural for them at all.
And
No.
the question, of course, that I want to ask to both of you is how, because this is how the memes got started, was that people on 4chan were arguing over what that dialogue exchange meant. Is it that Bane is saying it would be extremely painful for you, or is he saying that he is a big guy?
No. Okay, I see. I definitely see the confusion it causes because of how awkwardly worded it is, why someone might take it the second way. But obviously, it's a basic setup punchline joke, and it's the first. It would
be extremely painful. You're a big guy.
Because
for you.
You're a big guy, and this might have like gone through some kind of punch up because like ignore his response for a second. It would be extremely painful ... for you, because if you tried to take my mask off, I would fucking beat the shit out of you or whatever, you know. But they're trying to do a little witty repartee here, so the agent needs to have his little like snarky response. So he's saying you're a big guy, as in like you can take it, but that's disconnected because Bane was already setting up his joke. He's saying it would be extremely painful just so he can drop that killer punchline on him. So the agent saying you're a big guy is immaterial to Bane's follow up.
That scene and it's been so long since I've seen this movie, but that scene comes off like every single line was recorded on a separate day. Like over like 4 days, they recorded that scene.
Because
one
they
line
were,
at a time.
yeah.
It makes no sense.
Oh,
I'm sure they
it's
did.
important to note when we're going over, my the chronology of Dark Knight Rises and how the public came to understand it. Part of why that scene was very impressive to me originally was that when I first heard it, this is something that drives me insane, is that the original version of The Dark Knight Rises had a different audio track for Bane.
Yes.
And it was very distorted to the point where, audiences reacted negatively to it because one of my friends saw the preview and he said that it sounded like not just like a distorted speaker, but like super bassy, almost like the sound of concrete or something. Like it was supposed to be this real roar sound effect. But then when you watch the movie, it's
not at all.
It's ADR,
Yeah.
and the dialogue it's way louder than the rest of the film, and it's weirdly clear. It doesn't match the room tone at all, and
No.
I love the performance, but also he sounds like kind of ridiculous without that effect going on.
Well, because the thing was, there were tons of complaints about it because it was hard to understand him. Like people literally couldn't tell what he was saying.
But I mean, with the script in this movie, I think that would be a real advantage.
Yeah, it's so.
In my opinion.
This is why it's so weird that almost all of the little bits of humor that they try to put in these movies is either with Batman doing his ridiculous Bat voice or Bane doing his ridiculous Bane voice. It's like they don't understand humor and timing or whatever to the degree that they can see that if you have a guy going like blah, 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 we can take my car, but that you're not going to have the same, that the humor doesn't work because the way he's talking
it like
sounds
works
so
even
stupid.
less with the voices.
Yes,
Like,
exactly.
Bane, I think, transcends it because it's so like weird and disjointed and not funny that it becomes funny again. But the Bale's every time like Christian Bale has to say a funny line, like the "Get in My Car" one was the most painful for me. It's like I just imagine Kevin Conroy, that's his name, right?
Oh yeah, Kevin
Yeah.
Conroy.
Him saying it, and I'd be like, it would work. Like it wouldn't even be really funny. It would just be like sort of like I'm not gonna try and do the fucking voice. It would just, but it would work. Like he would say it in the voice, and it'd be cool. You know, it might not be very funny, but it doesn't need to be.
Right.
So I need to focus in.
Yes.
Sorry,
Let's
there's so
let
much to go
Rose
into it
continue the lecture.
Because my history with this film is like, again, years of posting about this one scene, this one airplane scene. And there's something that happens when you post about one topic for like years and years, is that it evolves to a point of like complete abstraction, where now everything in the scene has become a meme. The dialogue is a meme now. CIA guy is a meme. One specific image of his butt is a meme. Like everything in it gets like its own following, its own jokes, and it gets to the point where people will just start posting color blocks, and other people will be able to recognize from the color palette that it is the plane scene. Like, and this dialogue haunted me to the point where like, this is why I had to open up the episode with this, because it would drive me insane hearing about the plane scene without going into this. Anytime that I've heard someone say you're a big guy or you're anything, honestly, my lizard brain response now is to say, for you. It is just, it's deep in my psyche now, the for you memes. So,
for you.
Of course, this was a fantastic joke. We all loved it, but then it took a turn towards something, and this is where it opens up. This is where the cultural critique comes in. A warning to listeners, this is about to get very dark for a moment.
Oh boy.
So if people remember in 2015, Germanwings Flight 9525 crashed in the French Alps. It was a huge news story. It was a huge tragedy. And of course, what I do when this happened, I checked 4chan. And immediately what happened was that it became a new... This is 2015, so this is 4 years after the meme has started. It gained a new life because of the synchronicity between the crash and the airplane scene, from the fact that the plane's number was for you, from the fact that it crashed next to a place called La Bane. People started freaking out, and it led to the concept of, at least this is where I first heard about it, the concept of meme magic, that 4chan's memes were powerful enough to cause reality to bend. And this may sound very silly, but that idea gained a new life, of course, with the election of Donald Trump, where 4chan really did believe that their memes caused him to win the election. I disagree. But that is really, really what they believed. Well, and of course this... Sorry, what's that?
Oh, no. So was this the first time that 4chan posters started to talk about meme magic? Or was this an existing idea that was kind of emboldened by the Bane thing?
It probably existed before this, but this is the first time that I remember people being like, this is meme magic. Like, this happened because of memes.
Okay.
And then, of course, with Donald Trump, it was the definitive proof that their memes could, change the world. And from the way that 4chan picked apart all the tiny details of this plane crash, syncing it up to a random, very stupid movie scene, I think this is actually where you can look at it and understand how QAnon occurred on 4chan, why that environment would breed that kind of obsession. All these anonymous people obsessing over these tiny details, looking for any kind of synchronicity, hoping that their memes will change the world. I think this is where you can see the origins of where the QAnon idea kind of originates.
I think the idea that a bunch of cretinous, I mean, I was on 4chan for a bit too, but the people on 4chan that are really into it, they're little Greevils or whatever, goblins. And I think the idea that they can create a mass network of mind link and influence reality, frankly, isn't that far-fetched, Like, a lot of fiction has talked about it, and I just think it could. I'm not saying it did. I'm just saying, maybe.
Well, it's interesting because in a way, this is a branch of a long existing kind of idea in the realm of New Age philosophy. The idea of manifesting things into reality.
Yeah.
And in particular, the idea that many people with their minds focused on one thing will together manifest that in a metaphysical way. There's this idea in New Age philosophy known as the New Sphere, the NOO sphere.
I don't know that.
I wasn't really plugged into all these goings on around this time because around this time in 2011, 2012, I was sort of going through doing lots of drugs and mushrooms, cough syrup, that kind of thing, and getting super spiritual and all that shit. So I was learning about stuff like this, and the New Sphere was interesting to me because the idea was that basically like that kind of mass of manifestation. There's this other sort of metaphysical layer around the earth in addition to the atmosphere, stratosphere, or whatever. The New Sphere is like this mental sort of linking thing that connects us all and changes us all spiritually, sort of corresponding almost to the Jungian idea of the collective unconscious. And I remember then thinking that was basically what the internet is, right? Because it's this idea. It's similar to what Jung described and what the New Age philosophers kind of put their own weird twist on. But then like the internet is like a real physical manifestation of that because it's where all of our thoughts go to combine in this big fucking stew. And all of our kind of buried like subconscious weirdness kind of comes out on the internet too, right? So that's a very interesting sort of convergence to me because this idea of meme magic and you linked it to QAnon, which also makes sense because part of what made QAnon such a big cross-cultural thing was the intersection of conspiracy theory thinking and like kind of New Age philosophical tradition, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, that is like such an interesting confluence to me that this Western neo-spiritual idea sort of got fused with internet culture and memes, and that all kind of metastasized into this idea of meme magic, and that becomes QAnon.
The other part that lines up very well with QAnon, which is something that I mentioned in the Batman Begins episode, but this movie takes it even further, is that watching this, I realized that The Dark Knight Rises actually does show basically what the QAnon conservative mindset is. Because look at what our subjects are. So first you have, this quote unquote revolutionary group who's actually backed by, a shadowy cabal of,
like vaguely Arabic,
people.
Chinese things. Yeah. But it's still led by a white guy,
who is going to stop it? Who's going to stop this fake social justice uprising? And because it's fake, you don't have to take it seriously. That's like, it undermines everything.
Yeah.
Who's going to stop it? It's a man who in public acts like a rich asshole, but that's only because in the dark, he's the hero. He's the Dark Knight. He's he's the secret, he's the white hat pedophile, as a lot of QAnon people seem to think. He's the one amongst their ranks who's gonna
holy shit
fix the system.
Rose, you're so right. You're so like fucking spot on about this. And people always say that like 300 is like the sacred text of the alt-right, but I think it's this. Like you've convinced me. I think The Dark Knight Rises might actually be like the founding principal document that the alt-right is built around.
And like everything, out of the right, it shares all the lazy confusion and also like the intellectual laziness, the confusion, and and ultimately the lack of any pleasure that I think is distinct to the modern conservative movement, the alt-right movement. This is a movie with very little, even though it ends like technically happy, it is a dismal view of the world. So jumping into the movie, I feel it's important to actually go over the first scene, the opening scene.
Wait, real quick, before we get off Bane posting, a friend of mine, it was like a week ago, was talking about like his coworker group chat was talking about what is the most like memeable movie trilogy, and like thinking about it, every big movie trilogy has a ton of memes
Star
just
Wars
because it's a
prequels,
big,
though, obviously.
It's but they're all like
be.
a big cultural event. Like you have Lord of the Rings, there's a bunch there. You have the Sam Raimi Spider-Man movies, there's a bunch there. I mean, all three Star Wars trilogies, honestly. But then
I don't think the new ones are that memeable.
The sequels, not so much.
What are
yeah,
the
that's fair.
lasting
But
memes from that? There's the chunky
Anyway, doesn't
Kylo
matter.
Ren with his stupid pants. There's nothing.
But then you get to the Dark Knight trilogy, and there's not like a whole lot, and the ones that do exist sort of in a different way. Like it's the Bane posting ones that were just so absurd that they became like started off in like a small subculture and then grew from there. And then the stupid voice, which everybody's like, yeah, it's just like a stupid voice. They don't have like the like appeal of the stuff that like one doesn't simply walk into Mordor or a million things from the Spider-Man movies. There's a weird disconnect there that when we were talking about Bane posting like earlier this week, I was just sort of thinking about how weird it is, sort of how weird it is the effect that this trilogy has had on just like culture at large when compared to Star Wars, the Spider-Man movies, especially the Spider-Man movies because they're both superhero movies, and then Lord of the Rings, etc.
Well, the other big one is an equally weird, clunky line from The Dark Knight, the "you either die a villain, blah blah, whatever."
Yeah,
like that. That's like a thing. That's like a line that's been heavily memed, and there are a couple of like
the Joker's got all the memes.
Yeah. There's
Joker's
definitely
That's
Joker,
true.
and well, that's interesting that you said that because that also kind of ties into the same idea that Rose was getting at, and the part of the reason that these movie trilogies are so memeable is because they are such big cultural events. Everybody's seen them, everybody knows them, and any little like weird piece of dialogue that sticks out, like everyone's going to remember. So even if it's like something that would seem totally innocuous and meaningless out of context, the fact that everybody remembers it and recognizes it is what makes it like able to become a meme, you know? So that's like another aspect of this kind of like collective hive mind thinking that fosters memes and indeed meme magic.
I should mention one of the other significant moments of the meme was Tom Hardy did a Q&A on Reddit for his movie Locke, which I actually love. I think it's a completely underrated masterpiece, a hidden gem. Everyone go watch Locke. But he did Q&A on Reddit, and of course 4chan found out and flooded it with questions related to the airplane scene. So, it was 100 comments that were all, "If I pull that off, will you die?"
Did he answer any of them?
Yeah, he actually I remember, I think I was logged on that night. But he was actually a very good sport about it. He didn't get too upset or anything.
Yeah,
I don't think. He actually did respond to them and played along a little bit. So I love Tom Hardy, big fan.
There's one
He
other
rocks.
thing I have to ask you, Rose, just for some clarity here. The plane crash, because I wasn't familiar with this event at all, actually. This plane crash was just a like tragic accident, right? It wasn't like a
Caused
terrorist
by
incident
a
or
mysterious masked man.
Well, I think it was originally reported as an accident, but then it was later deemed as like an intentional act by the pilot or something. But for like the first while, it was like considered an accident. So yeah, it wasn't anything like that.
So the pilot did they think that he was like like he was mentally disturbed or suicidal or something, or what?
I have
Perhaps
no
from being
clue.
raised in a prison.
That's wow.
I don't know if they ever found the motivation.
Creepy. Okay, I was just trying to decide how flippant I should feel about referring to this tragedy.
As meme magic.
Yeah. But it was for you and the flight number, and that was part of the reason it was meme magic.
It was flight for you, crashes, no survivors, crashes, near La Bane.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, and then it was just, people like trying to pick out, photos of the crew and trying to match them up with like people that are in Bane and the
that's
CIA
so creepy.
guys' crew in the
but
movie.
that's that same kind of thing about like people and pattern recognition and how conspiracy theories kind of snowball.
It's obviously being done as just like a joke.
Yeah.
But you can feel something very real there. Like that is how QAnon works. Is that pattern recognition, just like finding any little connection and making something out of it.
It's a joke, but it weirdly presages the thing where people post like two different pictures of Joe Biden and do close-ups on like the ears or like the corners of his mouth or something and say like this is why it's actually a clone or shit like that. Doing it in service of a joke or memeing, and then like we have this big cultural shift where memes seem to become where like you start believing the memes where the irony is lost, and now you're doing the same weird, creepy meme shit, but it's completely serious and you've lost your mind and gone down this whole rabbit hole.
QAnon, I've mentioned it on Twitter before, but it's one of the most fascinating cultural phenomena to me because I was on 4chan when QAnon started, and it's a bit. It was a bit, Like it was a bit. And then and
the alt-right was a bit, but QAnon was more like there was like a guy like pulling some sort of up to something. Like there's some sort of scheme going on behind the original QAnon thing.
And it kind of swapped. Originally it was just obvious shit posting, and then some people started to believe it after a little while, after it kept on going. And then eventually there is like at some point in time it gets sold to someone. Like there is an obvious change in hands. And then it becomes like a much more deliberate I would call it a marketing scheme.
Wait, are you talking about the actual Q like account? Like, because there's a specific like you think at first it was someone doing a bit and it got like taken over by
originally it was mostly just shit posting, and most people didn't take it very seriously, and then a few people started believing, and then it got popular, and there is like a specific point at which it really changes and it becomes something different and becomes kind of like the QAnon that we know now, which I'd say it's a little bit more purposeful and like how it's directed, and I would call it, even though it's basically a religion at this point, but to me it's like it's a long-term marketing scheme.
Well, because the guy that everyone now thinks is behind the QAnon account is like some kind of web entrepreneur or something in like Australia.
And he absolutely bought it off of somebody. Like I don't believe for a second he's the original guy.
Right.
I think I bought after like a year or two, like fairly early on. He just bought like a brand that he saw taking off, made an investment.
That is really fascinating.
And now it's gonna be a fucking religion. It's gonna be the religion of like the United States for the next 100 years. And I watched it happen because I was like a sad kid online who wanted to shitpost about Hannibal on 4chan.
Interesting.
Yeah. So anyways, that's my history with The Dark Knight Rises.
All right. Okay. That was great too.
You merely adopted the darkness. I was born in it, molded by it. By the time I saw light, I was already a man in my
mother warned me about getting into cars with strange men.
This isn't a code.